You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Monday. It is time to rock out here on the old bi-weekly options extravaganza, coast to coast, and indeed around the world. Yes, it is time for the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. Hope you had a good weekend. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are mainlining these days. This is going to be a fun little test, a fun little quiz for all of you folks out there listening who don't skip through the intro, because you're going to get a fun bonus, a pretty valuable bonus right now as we speak, actually. We had the folks from ITUB, A Leg to Stand On. You may remember them on the network recently, a fantastic charity. We've supported them for years here on the network. They have their big upcoming extravaganza known as Rocktoberfest coming up in Chicago this week, Wednesday, October 16th, 6 p.m., the House of Blues. And guess what? If you're listening to this right now in the intro, those folks, this is the charity after all. They're doing this out of the goodness of their heart just to reward our listeners out there. How awesome are they? They're not cheap tickets. These are close to $500 each at the door. They have given us 2 tickets to give to our listeners right now. So if you're one of the cool kids listening to the intro right now, and you're going to be in Chicago this Wednesday, October 16th, hit us up either on Twitter at Options, DM us, or of course reach out to our super producer, JCROTTY at theoptionsinsider.com. That's JCROTTY at theoptionsinsider.com. Heck, you can even use the website feedback form or info at theoptionsinsider.com. All of that should get to us. Make sure you do it soon. These are going to be first come, first serve. We have 2 tickets to also to give away to one of you lucky. That's nearly $500 worth of tickets. Hopefully, if you get these free tickets, it is a charity after all. Maybe you're kicking a little to the silent auction. There's a lot of stuff they have given away. You're going to get food. You're going to get drinks. You're going to get awesome music for 5 hours at the House of Blues. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. So they love our listeners. Show them some love back. go to the event. I'll be there. It'll be a fun chance to meet and greet with some of the listeners there as well, so it should be a fun time. But hit us up now. If you're listening to this, get over there at Options on Twitter, info@theoptionsinsider.com. Reach out to the super producer directly, JCROTTY at theoptionsinsider.com. 2 tickets only, first come, first serve. Be there or be square, as it is time for us to welcome on the unklest of Mike's, Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, as well as the rocking gifts of lobsters, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. I introduce them now, listeners, because it's that time. They are sweating profusely over their buzzer, especially the Rock Lobster, because he needs to start catching up. As we kick off another broadcast week with another 80s Trivia Challenge. Here we go. All right, we've been doing some audio daily doubles of late, but we are dispensing with that format this week. Maybe we'll go back to it. It's kind of fun. I do like it. But let's go out there now, because today, listeners, is a disputed holiday, however you want to call it. Indigenous Peoples Day, Columbus Day. I always took umbrage as a pure-blooded 100% Italian American that we kind of get stuck. This is our patron saint. We get Columbus. This is what we get. This guy who landed in the wrong place, didn't know where the hell he was going, and was kind of terrible once he got there. Not really the best patron saint for Italian Americans, but c'est la vie, that's what they stuck us with. This is no longer a holiday. It used to be a holiday for the markets. So I get all the disputed issues with this. It makes a lot of sense to me. The one thing that does bother me, though, is that as a result of trying to reform this holiday, they stopped teaching. I remember asking this to my son not too long ago when he was younger. I was like, a simple question I will ask to the audience and to you folks out here. They don't teach this anymore. What year did Columbus discover America? Kids don't know this anymore.
Buzz!
There you go. Uncle Mike crushing it again.
What?
Crushing it
I
again.
buzzed. I didn't hear him.
Yeah, he said buzz.
Yeah, we chat buzz.
And he typed it in too.
He said, but he beat my buzz?
Yeah, and he also typed it. You have to type it.
Wait a minute. He said buzz before I said buzz.
Yeah, and plus he typed it. We don't do audio types buzzes. We do.
Yeah, we've never done that.
Chat buzz.
Fuck. God damn it.
Maybe he'll get it wrong. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what year did Columbus sail the ocean blue?
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
I get wanting to teach proper history, but you should at least teach the year that the disputed event occurred. Kids don't even know that anymore, which is kind of bonkers to me. So yes, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Very simple nursery rhyme. You could teach kids that in there. Then you could go on to teach them all the awful things that happened afterwards. But that is indeed something that happened. So I don't know, just kind of thought it was kind of funny. So not really 80s, but they did teach it in the 80s. So maybe we can make it an offhand 80s trivia segment as we keep on going right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, listeners, that's what Rock Lobster gets for missing a couple of shows. He forgets how to play the game. And he cost himself yet another point. Man, I guess technically, I'll have to go count the numbers again. I think it's technically still possible for him to catch up, but he really needs to get his 80s and associated trivia game in store, listeners, as we keep on. Did you remember that simple nursery rhyme? Do you remember that year? They even made a pretty crappy movie with Gerard Depardieu, I think back in the 90s, called 1492. Can you imagine if they made that movie today, what a different movie it would be? Not a great movie in and of itself, but kind of funny nonetheless. It's in the title of the movie, so some people could at least remember that. But as we keep on rolling here out to what is trading out here today, listeners? And, if you're looking for a nice green day to kind of kick off the week, well, there you go. If you're in the Uncle Mike camp, you're a happy camper right now because we got our old pal, the Dow, up about 0.5%, S&P up about 0.75%, and NASDAQ up 0.85%. And because I don't want to neglect them, let's go to our old pal, small caps as well, up about 0.2% out there today. Our old pal, VIX Cash, coming back down the wall of war it was climbing. Not fast enough for my liking. But you know that song and dance by now. Right about 19.75 as we kicking off the show. Down about 1.25. It's got to get its button gear to the dark side in a couple of days. We'll see if that comes to pass out there. Not looking too good right now. So 19.75 down about 1.25. And our old pal VVIX at 108, down 10 points from where it was just last week. If you're kind of mystified by the machinations of VIX right now, we did do an extensive conversation about it on Vol Views last week with Dr. VIX. And of course, our buddy the Flowmaster also addressed it on the Thursday show. We always say it, the devil's in the details with these vol products. And when those election-oriented contracts roll into the rotation, into the calculation on VIX, tends to gum up the works a little bit. And that's what we're seeing right now. So if you're mystified as to why VIX has remained stubbornly north of 20 until pretty much today, that's pretty much it. But we shall see if that continues to come off out here, listeners. As we go around the horn to our reigning and defending and appears to be going to be our victor again for this show. I come up with a fun prize again for this show. We'll see. I'll have to come up with something cool. I mean, he already is the IC champ. I mean, that's pretty cool. But I digress. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, if you have any thoughts on, I don't know, Columbus or not, whatever floats your boat. I know he's not exactly everyone's bag. He's not my bag, but it's a disputed holiday to say the least. If you have any thoughts on that, or just the fact that no one remembers what year it happened, that's kind of crazy to me. Or B, what's catching your eye out there in the market, sir?
Yeah, I didn't know nobody knew what year it happened. I'm going to ask my kids that after the show's over today.
I guarantee you, about that. You have two kids, I'd be at least 50% that they have no idea.
All right,
at least one of them will not know.
All right, I'm going to test that out after this. I'm going to text them while Andrew's talking during the show.
Well, if you text them, they're going to Google it. You have to
they don't cheat. They wouldn't care enough.
You have to spring it on them in person. Just like, hey, curious, what year did Columbus get? Just see if they know. Just curious. I guarantee you at least half of them will not.
All right. I'm kind of curious myself now. So anyway, no, I don't really have any enduring memories of Columbus Day, but there's one memory that I've never had on Columbus Day, and that is happening today because never before in the history of the entire stock market has there ever been a better day to sell than today. We are at new all-time highs in the S&P 500, and I cannot recall a time on a Columbus Day when that has ever happened. I know Andrew's been around a little bit longer than both of us, so maybe he's experienced that in some way, shape, or form, or maybe I just missed it. I'm not sure, but new all-time highs on a Columbus Day. Not quite sure what to make of this. Could be just the whole low volume thing, and we're pushing the markets up that way. I don't know, but the fact that we are at new all-time highs, it's never a bad thing for us bulls out there. Some other things with which I'm seeing right now, we are selling off a little bit in the bond space. We have the 10-year yield down a little, or the yield is up. The 10-year itself is down a little bit. Silver's having a little bit of a sell-off, as is gold. Nothing major, but just a little bit. So we are seeing some money moving, and it is moving into the broad stock market. Some names with which we follow that we have in our triple income portfolio, as well as some of them in our strategic night portfolio for growth. Qualcomm actually up over 3% on the day. That's one to where we've been holding off selling covered calls on it because it was down. We wanted to give it a little bit of time to come back, and looks like it's doing that. So that's always exciting. And then a couple other names with which just looking at on our screen, of course, we have the NVIDIA watch. NVIDIA, it's up kind of a slow day for NVIDIA, only up like 2.7% on the day, up $3.60 or 67 cents. So that's kind of a slow day for NVIDIA, but I guess for a Columbus Day rally for NVIDIA, that's a good thing. Apple is back up over the 230 mark. So that's something that's always exciting to watch for the Apple people out there. And then just very quietly over the course of the last few months, a stock that's really kind of made a name for itself again that I think it's pretty significant. It's just something that throughout my career, it's always kind of been the boring stock. And then now it's getting interesting again. And that is Big Blue, IBM. Up 1% on the day, not having a huge day today, but just with the rally that it's been having recently over the last few months, it's interesting to say IBM in one of the stocks with which you're watching on the day. So with this week, it's October. We're halfway through. Well, tomorrow we'll be halfway through the month. We have expiration coming up on Friday. We have a lot of earnings coming up over the course of the next few weeks. So maybe this is the market saying, hey, things are going to be good but we don't know. We'll have to discover things. And if we get lost discovering things, hey, we honor someone for doing that today. So nonetheless, that is what I am seeing in today's market.
We honor people to get lost discovering things. Yes. Have no idea where they're going, but hey, they end up somewhere at the end of the day. As we keep on rolling out to the shores of Maine. Mr. Rock Lobster, I'm curious. I'm not sure if you're 100% like me, but as a fellow paisan out there, I've never really liked that, Columbus has been the guy they ascribe to us. I don't know. Maybe you have a different viewpoint. And then B, what's catching your eye out there in the market? I mean, at least pick a guy who knew where he was going, right?
Well, I mean, he was going west.
I guess in the general direction, but don't land in Bahamas and say you're in the Indies and call the people Indian.
I believe he would have eventually run into some fairly large land masses if he did not run into the Indies. But, just from a historical point of view, I guess he was really the only famous Italian in the 1930s or 40s when we got the holidays. So,
which did you hear the latest breaking news about Columbus just the last couple of days? Apparently, he is now Spanish and Jewish. They've done DNA tests.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, in the further
our
debunking.
Italian guy.
Yep, our Italian guy.
Who was Italian.
Yep.
Didn't he use the Spanish? He used the Spanish to get him over there.
He used Spanish money, Ferdinand and Isabella, yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny as well.
So, history is history. Anyway, he ran into the New World, although I had to say it does take some guts to jump on a boat, head due west with only so much food and water, go past the halfway point and keep going.
Guts I'll give him. Guts and spades. That's pretty much all you can give him. But
and plus, didn't they think he was going to sail off the edge of the earth?
Yes, totally. I will totally give him cojones for miles. I mean, I'll give him that.
But, I'll let everybody else debate all the other stuff. But anyway, so our one Italian, I don't think there was any other famous Italians, maybe except you can't have Fiorello LaGuardia Day, who was a very good mayor of New York in the 30s or something.
We named
right?
the country after Amerigo Vespucci, so give us his day. Why not? Why not him?
And what did he do? Isn't he didn't he draw a map or something?
Yeah, he was another explorer and discoverer. He was big enough to name the country after. Give us his day. Why not?
I think Amerigo Vespucci, too hard to pronounce. So they went with the easy one, Christopher Columbus.
It's so hard it's so hard to pronounce they named the country after him.
Well, they had to truncate Amerigo somewhat.
Well, we have that. It's the 4th of July. That's when we celebrate America, right?
I guess so.
I guess that's technically Amerigo Vespucci's birthday now. Yes, there we go. I never thought of 4th of July as Italian-American holiday. I like that, Uncle Mike.
There you go.
So now that we've alienated, 95% of our audience, all the non-Italian ones, we can... but I like the conversation to be quite honest. Okay, so what's the market doing? We got this little thing that has dominated the headlines. I can't even look at social media anymore at all. But we have the election. And why is VIX 20? Because it's sampling election volatility. Why is the volatility 20? Because that's how liquidity providers price things. So it's essentially you got, we're pricing the election like it's an earnings cycle. Nobody really, and I have to say, honestly, the market is pretty good at pricing stuff. This is a fairly unknown stuff. And nobody knows what's going to happen. That's it's sad, to be quite honest, that nobody knows what's going to happen after the election. Who's going to, who, if we win, there's so many questions. I won't even go into the questions. Normally it would be okay, there's an election and we have a winner. It's a little sad in the US that this is even a subject, but nonetheless, there it is. So the market is pricing that uncertainty. So again, it's hard to take the politics out of the market currently because it's literally pricing that uncertainty. That uncertainty you could price at around $200 for the straddle going into the election, for the straddle that's expiring maybe just after. So as long as the value of that thing stays up there, right, the liquidity providers like earnings, what do? They're just going to keep pretending that time is not going by, and they just replace theta, the decay of the option, with volatility, and they put the vol back in the option. So, and what I've been telling my students at Option Pit is, okay, VIX is 30 days ahead. So right now we're around the 14th. So about a week after the election, those vols start to normalize only somewhat. Only somewhat. So the entire vol curve after the election is essentially in SPX, volatilities per term, it's almost per day now because of the weeklies and the dailies, is like all in the 15s, 15.5 on election on the 8th, and in the like low 15s, 15.10, 15.14, all the way. And then you start having a little bit of like a contango skew pattern, which is historically, it's kind of normally how it trades. Because remember, every week that goes by, the straddle's worth more, so they don't have to leave the vol as high in a high vol situation. So now that we're out to November, let's call it 14th, okay, the at the money straddle is still trading around like, okay, I've told my students 2 weeks ago it was 222, and now the at the money straddle is 218. So they're letting it decay slower than Black-Scholes says it should decay. It's decaying a bit, but not. It's probably only decaying around 30% of normal, I think, something like that. I had it worked out, but it's decaying much less than normal. That's the short answer. So my guess is those election straddles will be roughly $200, something like that, which right now is about 4% of the market. Let's say every 100 points is about 1% or 2%. So like right around 400. So that's what the market is pricing. And then of course, we don't know what happens afterward. Or maybe it's or now here's the second part. So that's the vol question. Why is VIX, why Mike just said, normally when Mike says his famous phrase, never in the history of SPX have we been so high, VIX is usually like 13 or 14 or 12. And it's almost 20. So market at all-time high, but volatility and a vol curve, which is in a little backward. Normally we'd be more like hiding under our desk because the market's moving all over the place, but it's just moving straight up. So my guess is what's happened from last week. So last Monday, today it's 58.50, so 200-point rally in a week. As near as I could tell, Kamala had a bad week. Trump had a good week, relative. Mostly, I think Kamala just had a bad week, and the betting lines just went nuts. So, I think just polling, betting lines, everything now swung hugely toward Donald's. People can go argue and whatever, but I just read the news and the data. I'm not pontificating. So you have the more somebody is ahead. Okay, even if it's Kamala, to be honest, who knows? But generally, the more certain the market is on an outcome, the more we rally. And that's where we are. So in my head, prior to the election, with the relatively thin volatility, we could trade 5,900, close to 6,000 prior to the election, just because there's no relief valve on what's going on. AI thing was good. Tesla had their big show last week. It was kind of cool. There's a lot of euphoria, potentially new administration. Everybody gets happy about that early on. Just historically, that's what happens. So you could see that could be easily bleeding into stocks. And the third thing is the bond market going the opposite direction that the Fed wants. which again, I think that is another thing that's keeping volatility a little more elevated into this rally. Is they cut rates by 0.5 point, and bond prices have gone down and yields have gone straight up. So the bond market does not believe the Fed anymore. They don't believe the federal government anymore. They don't believe like the deficit spending problem they have. Since 2019, government outlays are up 50% since 2019, the end of 2019. There's no COVID's done. All this other stuff's kind of like, and we're left with this huge overhang of spending that's not going away. So the bond market is like, okay, we're going to just keep rates higher, no matter what you say, Fed. So when does that become a problem? I don't know. I don't really know. We've talked about it on the show for at least a year, 2 years, maybe whenever, when we pass that Inflation Reduction Act, when government spending really took a huge pop up. Another one, right? Don't forget, every administration in the last 15 years has ramped up spending, 16 years. So that's where we are. But the U.S., right, stocks go up because generally capitalism and businesses work and they can make money. And at least for right now, because of the things I outlined, if the market is starting to get confident about an outcome, we're going to rally. And I would not get in the way of this rally. And it would not surprise me if we hit that big 6,000 number prior to the election, just on the thin liquidity, if all the trends continue as they are right now. And that's kind of how I see it. So there you go. That's my outlook. My outlook is my position right now.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned kind of the election impacting everything. And that is true. That is the case every 4 years. And you could always play it indirectly through the markets and through vol. This is the first presidential election that I could recall. You could really play the election and express your outcome on the election directly through listed products that are here in the U.S., not some crazy overseas binary. I mean, they are effectively binaries, but they're listed here now in the U.S. We just had the folks on our Pro Q&A last week talking about it. I'm looking at the numbers right now. You can go to this Forecast X, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Mr. Petterfee over there at IB. He created his own to trade on. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and you're correct. They have swung. And, forget about polls. At the end of the day, polls are only... they're flawed. Real money at the end of the day is always the best predictor. That's why we talk about options flow all the time and everything else. Real money has always been proven to be the best and analytical and predictive tool at the end of the day. And right now the markets have swung. Just last week, Kamala was, I think, 51, 52%. These are binaries, so they're effectively pricing in the probability, listeners. She has swung to 48 now, yes, percent. Of course, this is just straight up, will she win the election? 48%. No, 52%, and Trump now 51. I believe he was around 48 last week as well, and no, 49. Size volume on each of those as well. 483,000 contracts on Kamala and 405,000 on Trump. It was roughly 3-1 in favor in terms of volume in favor of Harris last week. So kind of interesting. Obviously a big groundswell for Trump over the past week. So intriguing stuff. Again, I can't recall anything that was listed here in the U.S. that you could trade back in 2020 where you could directly wager and speculate on the outcome of the election. So if you're intrigued, these things do exist now on platforms that you've actually heard of. They're not going to go the way of the dodo. So kind of interesting stuff and very, very different, which is, again, intriguing at the end of the day. Let's go out here to the markets. Let's see what's intriguing out here. Let's start in VIX land. Is VIX lighting the world on fire today? The answer is no. 426,000 contracts. I mean, I guess that depends your frame of reference. If you look at the newly lowered, newly adjusted ADV out there in VIX land, which is down to 813,000, then yeah, 426 is more than halfway there, so that's mildly impressive. But in the annals of what we've seen in VIX lately, not a heck of a lot lighting up the tape. The big dog out there today, 25,000 of the Jan 21s. Looks like they may have overwritten those, though, today. Let's just look really quick. Yeah, they sold them for 256. So an intriguing covered call out here in VIX land, listeners. By the way, we do also have those daily VIX options on futures popping off today. Be interesting to see how that changes the game out here. SPY looking kind of light. Let me just re-rack SPY right now, see if any paper has popped in here. Yeah, not really. 3.75 million. That's very light. We usually expect to see SPY around 4.25, 4 1/3 right now. So pretty light. The ADV 7.75 out there right now. The S same deal, 1.66 million. We expect about 1.75 this time of day. The ADV a little bit shy of 3 million, 2.95 out there. Small caps looking pretty hot. 729,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV is 1.33 million out there. So look really quickly. Let's dive into a little small cap. 72,000 of the NOV 209 puts. That's the big dog out there in IWM today, followed by 70,000 for number 2 of the 211s. Looks like opening on the 211, so it seems like we got a bit of a put roll up, listeners, from the 209s to the 211s. So still pretty far out of the money puts, but getting a little bit tighter protection out there, which is kind of interesting. So rut always moving to the beat of its own drum, and that's the case again today. It's not all 0 day. It's actually going out to November. 140,000 contracts going up in this spread alone. Total of 729 right now. The ADV 1.33 million. And the Qs right about where we expect them. 2.3 million. The ADV 3.75 million. Out to single names we go. Listeners, is it a banger day out there? The answer is kind of, yeah. It's surprising. For a day when we have been closed historically. Some paper going up today. The Amazonians, 305,000 contracts, listeners. Trading 188 off about 83 cents, or about not even 0.5% today. So not a banger day, but a decent volume day. 305,000 for number 10. It's been a while since it's been over 300K to break into the top 10, so that's good to see. Number 9, we got SMCI, 316,000. They're selling off about exactly a buck, trading right around 46.75 right now, off almost 2.5% on the day. Good for number 9, 316,000 contracts. Number 8, MicroStrategy, 208.85, off 3.75 or nearly 2%. Good for 342,000 contracts. I'm starting to see a theme with some of these. Number 7, keeping that theme going, it's Mara, our old pal Mara Holdings. 16.95, up nearly a buck, about 90 cents or about 5.5%. So popping hard out there in Maryland. Let's look really quickly because we're not going to be able to do a crypto today. Let's look really quickly, see what's lighting it up in Mara Holdings today, listeners. It is 31,000 of the OC18s. Interesting. Those are opening, and about 25,000 of the OC19s also opening. So, as expected, near dated, now at this point, weekly upside calls. You know, Mara should historically might be able to make that. Let's see really quickly. What do they pay for those 18s? They paid 61 cents. Ooh, that's kind of rich. But, you know, Mara can move, so they might have a chance. But again, this thing's got to keep running. If it stalls out after today, no bueno. Either way, number 7, 343,000 contracts for Mara. Then we're off to Chipland and A Techland. Number 6, AMD, 166 and about a half, off about $1.45. Good for 351,000 contracts. And the number 6 spot, number 5, keeping it in A Techland. It's the fruit company, 230.40, up 285 or 1.25%. So apparently they're loving the fruit company again today after hating it. Not loving it on the volume side, though. Still pretty anemic. Only 373,000 contracts on the tape. Number 4, it's Coinbase. My goodness, they are loving themselves some Coinbase. Feeling the Bitcoin love, apparently. Bitcoin threatening 66K. So Coinbase taking the rally as well. 191.75, up 15 1/3 or nearly 9% today. Coinbase popping hard. Number 4, 443,000 contracts. Number 3, out to SoFi, $10 even, up a buck, or nearly 11% out there. Feeling good. They got a $2 billion investment from Fortress, apparently, and more buyers than sellers today. For number 3, 639,000 contracts. Number 2, it's the old Tesla. Everybody hated that Robovan, what did he call it? The Robovan reveal day. But apparently the stock they're liking it today, up about $1.50, trading $219.20 out there today. And over the past 5 days, though, still off about $25 or 10%. So Robovan, apparently no bueno. The name is ridiculous. 1.2 million contracts. He said Robovan. I nearly smashed my screen. It was so bad. But hey, a conversation. Just say Robovan. Everyone's going to call it Robovan. And then number 1, it's NVIDIA, 2.7 million. So decent paper, but still kind of light for an NVIDIA. Up 382, though, or nearly 3%, as Uncle Mike already told you. Up 138.62. And the number 1 spot, And we are back in it, listeners. We are back in earnings season out there. So stay tuned to theoptionsinsider.com for all the latest options news and, of course, earnings fun out there. We've got some names popping off. We've got J&J before the bell tomorrow, 161.5. They're pricing in $4 in the past. They moved 367. Bank of America before the bell tomorrow, $42 is where they were trading. They were pricing in $1.43. In the past, they've moved the $1.18. I'm just going to bang through a couple of these listeners because we're coming up against it already. We got Citi tomorrow before the bell as well, 65.75. They were pricing in about 2.25. In the past, they moved the $1.75, so 50 cents more on the top there. United Airlines tomorrow after the bell, 61.80 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 385. In the past, they moved about $4, so taking a little bit off the top. If that's not enough for you, listener, let's go out to rolled aluminum, aka Alcoa, 16th after the bell, formerly kind of the kickoff of earnings season. These days, who cares about rolled aluminum? 41 even, up nearly $3, or should they pricing in nearly $3? $2.93 to be precise. Exactly 60 cents more than they moved in the past, which is $2.33. And let's go out a couple more days. Let's go out to the 17th. Let's go out to Netflix after the bell, 722.75. Man, that's quite the stock price. They're pricing in $51.86. My goodness. In the past, they've moved $82.50. My God, taking about $31 and change off the top. My goodness, or $30 and change. Oh, wow. The Widowmaker taking a lot of juice off the top. Is that the right move? I guess we will find out. Right now, our season hanging out at 121%, listeners. But again, only 11 names have reported, so don't read too much into that number. As we keep on rolling, it's time for some more numbers. It is time to get odd.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, it's time to get a little AI crazy. What do you say? It is time to talk a little SoundHound AI Inc. How about that? Ticker symbol SOUN. We were mocking this name not that long ago on the show, and then they kind of just came roaring out of the gate. Voice artificial intelligence, if the name didn't indicate that for you already. Trading right around 5.25, up about 35 cents today. On the year, by the way, today that's about 7.6%, so a nice little pop for them. On the year, you don't need me to tell you it's been a good year for anything with AI in the name. This is up 338 or 178% on the year, even though they are off their highs. Their highs came back in March of this year, I think when we were coming off whatever the hell that roaring kitty nonsense was, and they got up to 10.25 intraday. So they're pretty much exactly $5 below that now. And they've kind of been hanging out in this $4 to $5 and change range pretty much for almost the last not quite the last 6 months, but pretty close. So they've kind of been kind of range bound. It seems like, though, Mr. Rock Lobster, somebody's saying it's time to break free from this range. They came in this morning. They said, no 5 halves. How are they? And they got 38 cents at 40. So decently tight market for SoundHound AI. Say that 5 times fast. And they said, done. We will pay 40 cents. 23,311 times. That's not small. If you're wondering us about an 80 vol, listeners, the stock was 5 cents higher. It was 5.32 when they put this trade on. So not exactly a big underlying swing in this name. And at least they're going out. They're going out to November, so they're not buying calls that expire this week. So that's something. And maybe also to add into your analysis, they do have an earnings announcement between now and expiration, and that is on November 7th. So maybe that adds a little bit of gumption, a little bit of fun to these calls. Mr. Rock Lobster, SoundHound AI, somebody really had to have it 23,311 times today. The no 5 halves for 40 cents. What do you think?
They be loving these calls.
They do be loving these calls, yes.
Now, it's not passing the sniff test today. Sadly, the Nova Ordinary 5.5s are 35.37 currently. But that didn't stop paper from buying another 12,000 of them. So the volume on those things today is 35,000 contracts now. And I was also looking at paper. There's almost another 30,000 in the October expiring this week, 5s and 5.5s. So it might not be happening today, but somebody thinks it's going to happen eventually. So, are the 5.5s good spec for 40 cents at a 60 volatility in a stock like this? Sure. It's a reasonable spec call to buy. Although I never like it, at least for this show, when how many times do you buy a call and you're already down like the first couple minutes on a 1 month call and you're like, ugh. So anyway, it does have that I just bought the top feeling with it, but not a terrible purchase overall.
Yeah, the fact that they get an earnings in there, in all of the annals of people throwing money at the upside for AI, Mr. Rockloud, I don't hate these as much. Yeah, it's 40 cents, so you're getting close. Not quite 10% of the value of the stock, but it's getting close. So, you're getting in that ballpark where I'm getting a little uncomfortable with the outlay. But, in the AI context, it's not the worst. You get an earnings cycle. You're getting some duration. But that's something. You know what? You know who's the ultimate arbiter of these things, Mr. Rocklops? It's the audience. So we're going to put out a flash poll to our audience, see if they like these calls for 40 cents or not. Because at the end of the day, who are we to judge these things? It is the audience who is the ultimate arbiter of this type of thing. As we keep on rolling out here, listeners, let's go out to another one. I think we talked about this one in a while. This is Blink Charging Company, ticker symbol BLNK. We talked about ChargePoint. Maybe we haven't talked about Blink on the network before. Trading $2 today, kind of unch, $2 exactly. So an unch day, even though they've had about 13 cent range on the day. So they moved around a little bit. On the year, this one's kind of been all over the place, but they are net down about exactly $1 or about a third right now. They did rally it up to about 466 back in November of last year. And then they tried multiple times since then to rally it in March and in December. And again, most recently in July, up to 370. And they couldn't sustain any of them. They just crushed it. At least it is off its lows. Its lows came about a month ago and it was about $1.50. So they're up 50 cents from there. So I guess if you're looking for a glass half full, there you go. And somebody, Mr. Rock Lobster, wants that glass to be half full because they came in this morning. They said, Blink, Jan 2 halves, what you got? And they got 16 cents at 24. They said, we will pay 23 cents. Thank you very much. 8,318 times. The stock was 4 cents lower. So they got 4 cents in the stock since they put this up. The stock was $1.96. This is another one where you're going to get earnings between now and then, November 7th. So November 7th, apparently a popular day for earnings. 23 cents, 8,000 times. Mr. Rock Lobster, are you down with these? I guess gun to your head, you got to pick one of these. Actually, we won't do that yet because we have one more to analyze. But what do you think about these Blink Jan 2 halves?
Well, I won't compare them to the other one yet. But at least the Blink, they're going out and buying some duration. But they're 20% out of the money till Jan. Not unreasonable. Again, not unreasonable purchase. But charging stations. You know what we think about the charging station thing. It's one more. I'm still feeling it's kind of a boondoggle on top of a boondoggle because that's what it's been. So it might turn around. But as of right now, the stock was a $3 stock. It could happen. A junk stock like this could pop, but it hasn't done anything in August, and the market has basically gone up from 5,000 to 5,800, and this stock has done nothing. So that is not a great sign as of right now. So I'm not a huge fan of these just because the charging station thing sounded great in 2021, 2022. It's not sounding great right now.
All right, and the last one, these might be kind of unfair now that I look at where the stock is, but Let's go out to everyone's favorite ITUB, a.k.a. Itaú Unibanco Holding SA. This is an ADR fintech. Talked about it before. Out of Brazil, listeners. Ticker symbol ITUB, ITUB, trading about 628, up about nearly a dime today, or 1.5%. On the year, they're up about 83 cents, or 15%. So good year. Their low was 5.25. Their high was 7.25. They're trading about 6.25 right now. So they're right smack dab in the middle of their 52-week range. And it looks like somebody coming out right now, Mr. Rock Lobster, this morning. When the stock was a little lower, 621, they said the Nov 6s, how are they? They got 35 at 40. So effectively 14 cents at 19 cents over where the stock was. And they say, done, we'll pay 18 cents over. We'll pay 39 cents for these Nov 6s out here, Mr. Rock Lobster. This is another one you get earnings on November 4th. So the stock was 621. It's actually ticked a little bit in their favor, which is why I kind of say this one's maybe a little bit unfair because they're getting a little bit meatier on these calls. But what are your thoughts on the ITUB, sir?
I believe this is one of our favorite names.
I love saying ITUB. ITUB is fun.
Yes. Let's see. A Brazilian bank. You know what? I stopped kind of keeping track of Brazil after the fun went away. Around the elections that took place. So I mean, it has a possibility. I mean. When the market doesn't care when a stock is $6.29 and the $6 calls are 39 cents. That is not a lot of juice in an option.
Yeah, it's hardly AI upside.
This one is up money today. They're 40.45. So, but there's 11. There's like a dime. There's a dime of juice in these options so. As far as would you rather buy these calls than the stock? 100%. So from that point of view, yeah, it shouldn't take much theoretically for this stock to lift, or these calls to pay. So, not a bad purchase. I don't think this is a bad purchase. I mean, a call can't get a whole lot cheaper than that with a month to run.
No, that not much AI juice in these at all. So I'm gonna disqualify the ITUB because they're deeply in the money. So instead, let's go to BLNK or SoundHound AI. Gun to your head, you got to buy one. Which way you going, Mr. Rock Lobster?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the SoundHound because all you have to do is just do AI, yeah. And then that stock's up.
You got to do the SoundHound of those two. Exactly. That's the way I'm going to go to. Let's see what right now 100% of our audience says they are buyers of those calls in the early voting. So there we go, listeners. As we keep on rolling, let's see what Uncle Mike has to say. It is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, you now have the chance to answer the question everyone wants to know. SoundHound, no 5 halves or 40 cents. Buyer or seller? Go.
Seller.
Oh, look at you. Sold to you on AI. Interesting. Our audience disagrees, sir, but I digress. Have at it.
Oh, well, then I change. I want to be a buyer then.
You got to line up with the cool kids in the audience, sir.
I got to do that. I got to do it. As you can see, I'm really into the SoundHound, and I say that sarcastically. So anyway, what I want to talk about today for the strategy block is that right now, bonds are kind of in an interesting spot. And so let's say you want to get some type of bond exposure in some way, shape, or form, but you're just kind of concerned about it being just too high right now. You like the yield, and we were higher, but we're still kind of at the upper edge of the bond curve. Well, one thing you could do, and full disclosure, I'm doing this in some limited client accounts right now that are kind of newer to getting into the bond space, with at least through me, and we're selling in the money covered calls on bond ETFs. And what's the purpose of it? Well, we want to collect the yield. We like the yield on the bond funds, whether it's TLT, IEF, or LQD. I can't really get into too many specifics. My compliance people don't care for it when I do that. But let's say that you want to have exposure in some way, shape, or form. You like the yield on it. You're not necessarily going for upside. Well, by selling a deep in the money covered call, what you can do on it is you have a little bit of a hedge to the downside. Now, of course, you're giving up all upside, but you have a little bit of a hedge to the downside. So that way, if bonds pull back 2-3% in the price of the underlying, then you're protected depending on how deep in the money you go. Now, keep in mind, if all of a sudden we start raising interest rates like crazy again and bonds fall out of bed, you're really not going to have all that much protection. But if you really don't want to play the short-term roller coaster, you just want to get the yield, you like where the yield is on it, and maybe you want to get a little bit extra yield, then a deep in the money covered call might be something for you. When you are short the calls on the underlying, you still get to collect the yield that's happening. Now, there's two risks that exist to this. The first risk is that, well, I guess I should say three. So the first risk is you're giving up opportunity cost, meaning that if the value of bonds goes way up, you will miss out on it. The second risk is that if the value of bonds goes way down, you're going to be protected from the first few percentages of it, depending on how deep in the money you go. But if we do have a huge collapse in bonds, you're going to be collapsing right along with it. The third one that you really need to keep your eyes out for is early assignment. So if someone exercises their option early because the time value of the option does not benefit them enough to, or because of the fact that there's no time value left in the option and they want to collect the yield payment, well, then they're likely going to exercise their option early. And that's something with which you need to be aware of. So you might not get the yield with which you were hoping for. So if you're going 8 to 10% of the money or something like that, and they have those wide spreads on those options, probably not a good idea. You want to go a little bit in the money, so that way you're at least getting some time decay or some time value in the option you're selling. And then you know that you don't know, but the likelihood of getting assigned early becomes much less. And that is my Columbus Day strategy.
There we go, listeners. I see everyone tweeting all the clips from The Sopranos about that. Was a funny episode where they're all arguing about Columbus Day, a fun one. Go check it out if you haven't listened. As we check out our final segment, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
Yeah, everyone's tweeting out, happy Italian American. It's not Italian, it's Columbus Day. If you want to make it Italian American Day, we should do that. That would be awesome. Who can't get behind that? Everyone's eating pasta and going to Italian restaurants and drinking wine and watching The Sopranos. Who wouldn't be for a national Italian American? That would be awesome. Restaurants would get a huge boon. It'd be awesome. It'd be like the opposite of St. Patrick's Day. Instead of going drinking, everyone's going out to the restaurants and eating and watching The Godfather, maybe, and all the other stereotypical depictions of Italian Americans. But I digress. There we go. Let's just do that. Everyone can get behind that. Conversation for another day. We can't get behind. Looks like some bulls still in full effect out there. Market's almost pretty much unched, literally. The VIX is kind of unched. Market's kind of unched from where we were this time at the start of the show. So no real evolution on that front. As we go around the horn, see what everyone's keeping an eye on until the Thursday show. Or really quickly, let me check back in. Yeah, we're still at 100% of our audience wants to buy those calls, listeners. So you folks were feeling it out there on the old, at least right now you are. So we'll tell you what, we'll make it fun. We'll make it a flash poll, but we'll have it run through the Thursday episode so we can get a little bit of grist for the mills out there right now. Speaking of which, we also have a actual kind of question of the week, question of the late week last week that we kind of kicked off on Vol Views. It's expiring pretty soon, so get over that options, play along right now. We're saying quite simply, do you think we'll see an October surprise that impacts the election? Right now, our audience feeling conspiratorial, nearly 75% saying yes, 73.7% to be precise, 26.3% saying no. Mr. Rock Lobster, A, do you think we'll see an October surprise that impacts the election? B, what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday show, sir?
Well, I have to say, since the beginning of this year, has almost everything been like opposite land for like election wise? Like, you think, I don't see how we don't have some weird Octobers. Like, who knows what it'll be? I mean, apparently there was like a third attempt on Trump apparently this weekend, but
yeah,
you never know if it's true or not. I don't know. So yeah, I would say, and I think the market does not know from a vol point of view anyway. And again, the higher we go into the election, now I'm looking at real clear politics. The betting lines have pulled way apart in Trump's favor, at least for now, at least for this week, at least for today, I should say, because overnight it could be anything different. But at least for right now, I think everything is dominated by that. I think the bank earnings have come up, some have come up already, and they're pretty good. So again, the market is adjusted to higher rates for right now, but same problems. But the bond market is adjusting to the fact that government's going to keep spending. So they can all, the government spent for a while, and then inflation finally reared its head. Eventually, the market will correct this. It just depends on whoever wins the election has a kettle, I believe, to deal with. Basically elections and earnings as of right now. And that's kind of what we got for the next month.
Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you. Do you think we'll see an October surprise that impacts the election? And what are you keeping an eye on until Thursday, so?
I am not seeing an October surprise, although if it happens, I'd be surprised. And watching to see if the all-time highs can hold for Thursday, and just prepping for election earnings and all sorts of things happening. Watching the news, I guess I should say.
That's always good for your mental health. Just watch the news. All right, listen, that music means we are done here for this episode out here, listeners. I hope you're having a good start to your trading week. We are going to be doing some stuff out here today. It is supposed to be a holiday after all, so markets are closed, so that we know at least certain ones are, on Uncle Mike's favorite 10-year note side of the fence out there. But so there will be no crypto coming up later today. We'll be back again with our usual array of content throughout the rest of the week. If you want to see exactly what that is, just head on over to @options. It's right there, over there, pinned on our handle, the schedule for the week. So you can see awesome pro Q&A with the folks over there at Prosper. Tomorrow, of course, our newest doubleheader on the network coming up on Wednesday. The Futures Rundown, as well as, of course, we've got everyone's favorite OBC, a.k.a. Options Bootcamp. Then we're back again on Thursday, another episode of the old OB. Of course, if you want to check out all things Option Pit, maybe get a degree from Option Pit University, optionpit.com, the place to go. And to Mr. Uncle Mike, where should folks go if they want more Uncle Mike goodness?
By all means, follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw. Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. If you'd like to set up a phone call, would love to talk with any of our listeners when you have a need or a desire for a financial advisor who's not afraid of the option product.
Oh, I see you have the results of our pressing quiz. We're 0 for 2 with the kids.
I was 0 for 2. And
I told you.
My kids are actually very good students. So I guess I got to say, Mark, I feel your pain.
Yeah, they just don't teach it anymore. I mean, I get it. If you want to teach what happened afterward, that makes sense. But you should teach when the inciting event occurred, at the very least. So people have some sense of context. So there you go. I had a feeling that was the case, Mr. Uncle Mike. And, of course, you know where to go to check out our friends over there at Tasty. Happy to see them back on the show. Just tastytrade.com, the place to go to learn more. Always support the folks who are supporting the network at the end of the day, listeners, because they keep this steady flow of content coming to you. So thanks our friends over there at Tasty. Head on over there. Tell them you heard them popping up on the option block and you like what you hear. It's a good way to keep all these shows coming at you. We got more shows coming at you tomorrow with the Pro Q&A for our pro friends over there, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Then back with our usual array of content till we're back again on Thursday. Another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.